Hi, it's Linda Kroll. I am thrilled to have as my guest today Carrie Rowan, who is the author of Tell a New Story. And I know Carrie for the last year and a half, and she is a remarkable human being. She's a international best-selling author. She's also a gifted songwriter, and we're going to play one of her songs at the end of this interview today. And she wrote the book that we could all use because after the year we've all had, it's time to write a new story. It's time to tell a new story. And in the field of compassionate communication, it's how do you tell a new story that makes you happier and feel better about your life? And that's where her gift lies. So, Carrie, if you'll tell us more about yourself and what you do, welcome.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Linda, for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk a little bit about my story. You mentioned my book, Tell a New Story. And it's 5 simple steps to release your negative stories and bring more joy to your life. Because let's face it, that's what we're here for. And lately, these times have been really hard to feel more joy, right? To feel happy about our lives and what's going on around us. And so it's so important to tell a story. And I was so inspired to write this book because of the stories that I was telling myself. You know, I had a lot of tragedies and things that happened in my life that I wish didn't happen. And then I caught myself kind of telling stories that made me feel worse about the things that actually happened. And so I started to dig into this work, and I had really a lifetime of studying self-help and spiritual text and literature and reading all the greats and studying the greats from a really young age. I don't know why, I was just really into that stuff. So I started paying attention to my own stories and started realizing what was really inside my stories and what was hiding behind those stories and why was I telling them anyways. They only made me feel bad, yet I still kept telling those stories. I mean, we all know people who do that, right? You can think of somebody that you know that always tells the same kind of stuck story. And then you look at their life, and their life seems stuck too. And so there's a lot of credence and information, and really our stories are a little microcosm of our lives. And what we say and put out there into the universe is really what comes back into our lives. And that's why our stories are so important and so powerful to take a look at.
So what inspired you to sit down and write this in terms of the benefits to people? How do you see it benefiting people when they tell a new story?
Sure. Well, like I said, it's a very personal, this is really more like a teaching memoir, if you will. So I share some of my deepest, most personal stories in the hopes that you can recognize yourself in my stories. And I talk about the things that happened in my life that I wish didn't. And I talk about the stories, the real deep stories, the things I quietly said to myself. And I think we all know that storytelling is a great way to learn. It's one of the best ways to learn because you don't feel like you're really learning because you're just so engulfed in the story. But deep inside my own stories, you will see yourself. You will say to yourself, oh, wow, I tell that same thing to myself, or wow, that sounds like this other story that you might not even realize that you're telling that kind of quietly sits back there. You might just say it in your own head, or you might tell other people about it. But when we start to become aware of that, it's amazing how it just changes your whole perspective. You will notice, and a lot of my students that come on in my master class with me will tell me stories about, they'll be mid-sentence of a story. They'll just start telling it, and then they'll just retract it. They'll be like, wait a minute, I don't want to tell that story. It makes me feel bad. It makes my listener feel bad. And once you catch on to this work, which is why I really love it, you can help yourself. You can understand that behind all of your stories was a really good reason for telling it anyways. And when you can accept that and be compassionate with your stories and other people's stories, you can really start to rewrite them. And they really almost start to rewrite themselves once you get the hang of it and you start catching yourself telling these stories and asking yourself, hey, is that a loving story to me or not? And it really becomes part of the fun of the process of uncovering what those stories are and how to write a new story, because we all love to create things, and a story that makes you feel good and also everybody around you feel good as well.
Well, in terms of making everybody else around you feel good, I think that when I talk about compassionate communication, I know you have your 5 tips. I've got 4 for compassionate communication. It's how do you get to your best self, let go of limiting beliefs, unburden pain from the past, and relate from your heart. So that second part, that limiting belief, also I think relates to the stories we tell ourselves about the people that we're in relationship with. So does your book help you tell a new story about that relationship, about that person, so that you don't have to hold on to the same story you've been telling?
Oh, absolutely. We're singing each other's same song here. Because that's part of what's hidden behind the story, right? Is what is my belief? You know, what is my belief that I have about this person? And one of the things I teach my students is a little acronym called ABI. It's called Assume Best Intentions. And actually one of the 5 steps is uncovering your true intentions behind the story. And when we can really approach life from that perspective, and I'm sure you'd agree, Linda, that just assuming that people have the best and kindest intentions can change your whole relationship with everybody. Because let's face it, when we approach a relationship where we're thinking that somebody's intentions are less than pure, less than loving, less than honest, less than whatever it is, it affects our relationships dramatically, especially those that are closest to us. Imagine how that feels when somebody assumes, when they do that to you and assumes that you have a negative intention when really you had the purest intention but were just misunderstood. So I think finding compassion for ourselves and thereby offering more compassion to others is all in the book. It's all what I'm talking about with telling new stories and especially supporting your work too, Linda.
Great. Well, I love the ABI. I think that should be on every therapist's wall so that the clients could look at it and notice that the stories they're telling themselves usually have a negative aspect to it instead of assuming the best interest. Did you make that up yourself, or did you hear that?
I picked up Assuming Best Intentions from actually a parenting workshop that I was doing.
Right.
So it was just a small little thing, but it stuck in my mind, and I wrote it on a sticky note and I put it on my door. So every time I left the house, I saw that sticky note. And it really helps. It helps all relationships, especially with children, I feel like, where they're always, looking at us for a reflection back. Who am I? Am I okay? Am I good? Assuming that they're just doing their job. They're just, they have pure intentions. And especially, like I said before, those closest relationships, and I think romantic relationships as well.
Absolutely.
That,
And just think, if you assumed your best interest with your parents when they're starting to, do things that might annoy you, or people that you work with, I mean, it's a great acronym.
It's a really powerful one, right? And it's the intention behind everything that we do. And if you can stop for a minute and say, hey, wait a minute. I came up with this little mantra for myself when my kids were little, assuming that they were just doing their job, right? Like they burst into my office or have some, emotional crisis du jour. And I had this little mantra that said, oh, would you just look at so interesting? Look at, they're just doing their job, just testing boundaries, busting into my office, interrupting me. And it was my job to keep my cool and find that space that we create through some of the things I talk about in the book.
Well, I know we're both into energy, mindfulness, meditation, and you have videos in your book. Do you have videos too that you share?
I do. I have videos, and my book is interactive, which is so cool in this day and age of technology. And inside my book, why it's interactive is there are live videos with QR codes. And also I have my meditations. There's a meditation for each one of the 5 steps in the book. And it's super cool because my music is also in the book. You mentioned I was a singer-songwriter. So my stories first started with 3-minute songs, and I would talk about some of the things that happened. And so my songs, when I'm telling a certain story in the book, you can just see the QR code, swipe it with your phone, and here, this one is for a meditation. Here the meditation, you can see my video. I do some EFT tapping in here. I show you how to do that. So that's what makes my book interactive. So you can really get to know me a little bit more as the author and the story behind the story, really. And also hearing the music makes it really ties you in at an emotional level, with my heart and your heart, because we really are just one, aren't we?
We are. And while we're mentioning it, so I don't forget, they can get your book on Amazon or on your website, and your music on your website, right?
Absolutely. Jump on my website, carrierowan.com. There's a link for my book on Amazon. And it's just been an incredible whirlwind launching this, during all the craziness going on in the world right now.
Tell us about that, because you've gone from launching your book to launching workshops. So mention your workshops and all the different ways you're serving people. So tell us a little bit more.
Well, I never intended to launch my book during a pandemic, but it ended up being, I feel like it was the perfect timing, right? Because people are feeling so out of sorts and there's so much uncertainty in the world, and people just aren't feeling themselves, and stress and anxiety levels are up. So I was able to offer people some tools. I get on a Facebook Live each week and I share some quick little energy medicine tools and some quick little mindset things that people can use throughout the day as they start to feel stressed. So in that, in that case, it's really been perfect timing because I love to be able to reach out and help people. And you mentioned my course. So I launched my book, and then I thought it would be really great to take it one step further. And people like a little bit more hand-holding and some one-on-one coaching. So it's a live class. It's not a pre-recorded class. People come to class, and we spend each week, it's a 5-week course, and each week is one of the steps. We really dig into it. It's been so powerful. People have had tremendous transformations in there. And the other cool thing that happens in class is the connection between the women in the class. I assign accountability partners, and each week after class, there'll be a little bit of homework, and they end up connecting with these partners to talk about their stories and bounce things off of them. And there's been some really beautiful relationships, some friendships that will last a lifetime that came out of my courses. So these are the kind of hidden benefits that you get from not only understanding yourself, but also being a listening, a sounding board for somebody else and helping them with their stories. Once you figure out your stories and you teach it to somebody else, you can really help somebody with, one or two small things, one or two small shifts in their story can make a tremendous difference in their life.
Well, you mentioned 5 steps or tips. Are there some you can share with us right now? Tips or
Sure.
steps?
I'd love to give you tips. I can tell you about the 5 steps because the 5 steps are actually an acronym that I came up with that stands for STORY, STORY. And each one of those are an aspect of your story. And when you can understand where your stories come from, you can understand more about yourself and also have more compassion for other people's stories. And so the first one is S, state of mind. And we talk a lot about learning how to manage your state of mind. And it's so important these days when a lot of stuff is coming at us at once. We need to have ways and tools to manage our own state of mind, to stay in that really good place. Part of that, which is something that I feel deeply about, and I know you would agree with me too, is meditation. And I talk about that in the book as well. And then the second step is true intention. Understanding the intention behind your story, like we were just talking about assuming best intention, and also giving yourself that same favor of assuming best intention for why you were telling the story as you start to uncover these stories. So true intention really digs into the why am I telling this story anyways? What is it that I'm trying to do? I need help from somebody? Am I just trying to be friendly? Am I trying to get a need met? So there's all these hidden little intentions, and in the class we go through and really uncover some of the intentions in some of our stories that we don't really like to talk about much. Those little shame stories, those worry stories, those quiet stories that we say to ourselves in the head. So that's ST. And O is to really understand the outcome of your story. What do you want the outcome of your story? We often don't think about that. It was funny, I've given a talk on this a few times at the Natural Living Expo, and I had one gal come running up to me afterwards, and her biggest aha moment was that she never thought about the outcome of her stories. She never thought about her listeners. She was just so consumed with her story and having to tell it. She never thought how her stories were really affecting other people. And our stories are super powerful, and they can affect other people both positively or negatively. So taking a look at that I find really important in the whole model. And then, of course, the R is the reframe. I love the reframe. All coaches and therapists love the reframe. Really getting a different perspective on your story, getting into your story. And sometimes we cannot see in our own story the beauty that lies right in front of us. So getting into that reframe, looking at your story from a different perspective. And this is where it also can help to have that accountability partner to bounce things off of. Because also our friends are great to talk to because they could see one of our stories and they recognize that beautiful strength in us. But all we're focused on was maybe, the negative outcome of that story. So learning how to reframe your story is really powerful in writing a new one. And then lastly is the why, and that stands for you. You had the power all along. And in this day and age, in the society that we live in, our creativity and our self-empowerment is a lot of times wrung out of us at a really, really, really young age. So we celebrate taking our power back. And we celebrate that through understanding that we always had the choice. We have a choice to write a new story. We have a choice to live a new life. We have a choice to decide what we want to put out there into the world and who we want to be and how we want to respond to people. So all of this together are the steps that you use to rewrite your story and to a new and empowering story that you want to jump out of bed for every day.
That's beautiful. I do a lot of internal family systems work, and we talk about when we're in self, we're calm, clear, compassionate, connected. that state of being that you get into when you're meditating or being mindful, and that the parts of ourselves carry burdens from the past that we exile or we manage with or we get extreme. So what you're talking about is when we write a new story, we can listen to what our soul wants us to know. It's almost like Michelangelo and the marble. The story is in there, and
Yes.
if we let go of the burdens and the judgments and the ego blaming and all the things we tend to do about
Mm-hmm.
ourselves as well as other people, then the
Mm-hmm.
story is just going to emerge, as you said, when you take people back to the you that already has everything they need. We're all creative beings of light and love. And also, I wanted to talk to you about the fact that we all have to pivot in our lives. You know, we may not be living our life and decide, okay, I think I want to write a new story. It's life hands us some experiences that cause us to write a new story. I know for me, when I got divorced, it created a whole different trajectory for my life and took on some of the life's work that I do about helping people have better divorces or no divorces and better relationships. And I know you had a lot of change in your life. So could you talk a little bit about how you had to pivot and write a new story from what was happening to you?
Oh, absolutely. I had a lot of those things happen in my life as well. And for me, it was, losing my dad and my sister. My sister was only 38 years old and she died. And then my dad, only 18 months afterwards, was killed unexpectedly in this tragic accident. So it was a lot for my family to absorb. And at the same time, I just had I was starting my own family when my babies were really little. And so, there was so much happening all at once and so much that I didn't want to be happening and so much that the mind gets fixated on the why, the why, the why, the why. When I found myself telling these stories and my mind just would not let it go. It was constantly trying to figure out what happened and why this happened and all those why me stories and why my family. We had a great family. Why does this have to happen? We're good people. All those things that the mind does because the mind is so beautifully predispositioned to find what's wrong. And really having to get in there and understand for myself what it was that I was saying that was actually making me feel worse than what had already happened. And after digging into that and realizing that I really couldn't change anything that happened. I couldn't change anything. And the best quote on forgiveness was from Oprah, and it says that forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different. And when I heard that, it was like a shockwave through me because I was holding on to the hope that maybe this didn't really happen or maybe this would be different. It was just that hope. You don't even realize you're holding on to it in your mind. And I realized that I couldn't change any of that. I couldn't change any of what happened. And my overthinking on it and contemplating and just dwelling on that circular thought only made me feel worse. And I realized that the only thing I could really change was my own mind about what happened. And that
Well,
was,
I'm so sorry to hear about all those losses, Carrie. My
thank
heart goes
you.
out to you, honey. And when you were talking in terms of people finding the negatives instead of the positives, you're right. That's kind of our default position. But
Mm-hmm.
we can, I think we all have many stories inside of us. We're living one or two or a few, but there's many, many stories. And when we're mindful and meditate and looking for the positive, we can change our story so that we're not the victim so much as we become the hero. And what happened to us happens, not that it happens for us, nothing in your loss was for you, but the way that you've transmuted it into a program that helps other people, is part of the fertile soil of what you offer the world.
Mm.
So thank you for all you share. And I know you do a lot of work with energy and you do some work with tapping too. So could you people a few little tips on that?
Sure, sure. I love what you just said. I just wanted to say one thing about that. So it was so powerful. And I talk in the story about, when life throws you slimy oysters, you got to get in there. You got to dig in there and find the pearls. Did I want any of that to happen to me? No, of course not. But out of it, some beautiful things did arise. And I actually wrote my first full length CD. And a lot of that was sharing my inner feelings and my emotions. And it was very cathartic for me to write that. And so I look for things like that come out of it, a beautiful piece of art that came out of that. And then I was able to put that out into the world and connect with other people. I've made some of the most incredible friendships because they heard my music and they connected with that feeling and they thought, wow, there's somebody out there that gets what I'm feeling. And I don't feel so all alone anymore. And so for me, finding those gems and those pearls within the slimy stuff, the bad stuff, whatever our stories are, and polishing those pearls up is really what made a huge difference in my life, was being able to find music. And for everybody to find something that helps them, some creative outlet, something to help other people, really, helps ourselves, right?
Absolutely. I've got your website up. So could you tell people what they're going to find on your website and how to get to your gift and things like that?
Sure, absolutely. I see that right there, that lovely bar, carrierowan.com. So go to my website. There's a free gift on there, and it's 5 easy ways to shift your mindset and feel better fast. So they're quick little tools that you can use every day, just something to keep in your back pocket, to really help you, especially in these times, to snap out of some of the, anxiety and depression. And once you start to feel yourself kind of moving out of that and changing your mindset, here's the cool thing, and Linda alluded to this earlier. When you can find yourself more consistently in a better mindset, guess what happens? The stories you start to tell, you no longer want to tell those victim stories. You no longer want to tell that bad story that happened to you, or that bad day story, because you're suddenly feeling a little bit better. And meditation is cumulative. I love meditation. The book has 5 different meditations in there, because that's where we're going to find that peace of mind, that quiet, that space that it creates inside of us, so that we can choose to respond to life instead of our knee-jerk reactions. And so all of these are really part of the whole picture, of who we are and who we want to be. So I hope you find some fun stuff on my site. I also have some music on my site as well. You can listen to some of my songs on there.
And we're going to hear a song in just a minute. And the title of this song is what, Carrie?
It's called Love Heals.
Which is kind of the mantra I think that we both live by. Self-love and love for others. I mean, I always say that love is the answer, starting with loving yourself. And that when we get to our higher self and let go of those limiting beliefs and unburden the pain from the past that caused us to write the old stories and really relate from our heart and our spirit, we really can create our own new tunes. And tell us a little bit how you wrote this song that we're going to hear in just a minute.
Absolutely. This song is one of those songs that just came from that moment of inspiration. I thought I was writing, I tell a story in the book about this. I thought I was writing the song for this really beautiful organization that my music partner at the time and I wanted to donate some of our CD profits to that, to a really nice organization. So I thought I was writing a song for them. And it was incredible, because it was this organization that supports Children's Hospital here in Boston. And I had some early on with one of my daughters, had some experience with Children's Hospital. So I have a wonderful place in my heart for them. And that's where that song came out of. I started writing it, and halfway through, thinking I'm writing this for these children who need new hearts when they're born, and open heart surgery and all these things. And I realized that it was really my story, because I was kind of writing it from a parent's perspective, as if they were, talking to this child and realizing that love heals from the inside. That's where the love comes from. We have it within us always, and it heals from the inside, and then we send it out to others. And so I realized it was not just a story about these children of this organization that we were supporting. It was my story. It was my story about some hard times that happened when my firstborn was born. And it was everybody's story. It was every parent's story. It was everybody's story that ever felt a little bit broken, and that love could heal them. And it's really a universal story for all of us.
Fabulous. Well, I'm going to play it. It's going to be 3 minutes for those of you who want to stay on. And I'll tell you, there'll be some slides, and Carrie and I are going to come back on at the end. But if you want to just watch the slides and listen to the beautiful music, here it comes.
Just to be with me, to show me what love really means. I never wanted it to be this hard, and now I'm falling, I'm falling, I'm falling like a shooting star. See, there is so much more more you give meaning to what I live for. Please don't think I don't hear you say, keep on believing, believing, believing every day. Love me just as I am. Hold me, please take my hand. We're all just a little bit broken inside. We're all just a little bit broken. But if we open up our hearts, we open up our hearts. When we open our hearts, we'll find love heals from the inside. Love heals from the inside. Thank you for the gifts you bring. Your pure love, it makes my soul sing. Now that it's clear, I can see so much. There's a knowing, a knowing, a knowing. Healing is a touch. Love me just as I am. Hold me, please take my hand. We're all just a little bit broken inside. We're all just a little bit broken. But if we open up our hearts, we open up our hearts. When we open our hearts, we'll find love heals from the inside. Love heals from the inside. Love, 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 love me just as I am. Hold me, please take my hand. We're all just a little bit broken inside. We're all just a little bit broken. But if we open up our hearts, yeah, we open up our hearts. When we open our hearts, we'll find love heals from the inside. Love heals from the inside. Love, 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 love,
If you're still here, you were able to hear about the many gifts that Carrie shares with everyone. I invite you to join us in the Compassionate Communication community on Facebook, where we have other experts sharing from their heart, their wisdom, their light, and their love. And Carrie, I can't thank you enough for being here, honey. I've been in awe of all that you've been able to create in the last bit of time, and how much you're really heartfelt in what you download and offer out to the world. So thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anything else you want to say before we say goodbye?
It's never too late to tell your best story.
Love it. Love it. Tell a new one and align it with your heart. Okay, we'll talk to you again soon. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye, Carrie. Thanks, honey.